the Zachrilege cast, podcast, YouTube video, rarely fake, booked, and proud. SWJ, SJW, I can't read my own writing. And by that I mean Social Justice Wuss. This is episode 39. We are recording live on December 3rd, 2015. I would like to first thank Bryce for being on the show last week. So please support his naked Mormonism by going to GoFundMe.com/6 months, 2 books, and donate to his cause. So for me to prep for the show with Bryce, I listened to about 12 episodes of his podcast, which was about 20 hours of my life, which was the opposite of wasted time. I extended myself for this week's interview by listening to every minute of the Save My Soul podcast produced by the one, the only, the Sai Lost. Mind you, that's about 90 minutes of content, and that includes sound effects. Now, I'm actually jealous of sound effects because they're cool. I only have the limited collection over here that Google Plus offers me. So good evening, Sai. Welcome to the show. And it was really hard for me to not sing the Jewel song when I brought you
on. Why would that be?
Because I don't have her voice.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you for having me.
Still, see, I get into it. It's not hard.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor.
Well, thanks. I hope you at least by the end of the show, you'll think it's a pleasure. The honor part, well, you know, that'll be out the window, but that's why we drink beer.
And we do.
Can we talk about your religious background?
Sure. I was born and raised in a liberal Methodist church, and I believe liberal is important from the political standpoint because that means off the bat, you can't hate gays, you can't hate black people, and you can't do a lot of the things that a lot of Protestants do. So the leap to atheism from a political / ethical, moral standpoint was not very hard. You just kind of had to stop eating the wafers and drinking the grape juice, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, I spent 20 years of my life in that type of church. I've also done time in Catholic masses, Lutheran, and I've dabbled in Episcopalian, Pentecostal, and Southern Baptist congregations as well.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of dabbling, and it does seem like every hour at a Catholic mass is like 3 hours of your life gone. It's just a draggy, long experience. Got a lot of Catholic in the family.
I didn't know at the time I was ruining it for everyone else. I learned that later. That was kind of a thing. If you're a non-Catholic going to a mass, partaking in the communion, that was kind of a big deal, at least for a lot of the people that I've talked to about it since.
Well, the last time I went with my parents, my dad was like, you can do the thing where you go up and you cross your arms, or you're like, you let the aliens know that you're not one of them. And I was like, I'm not going up there. I'm staying here.
Right.
In a pew. I don't get the call and response. Maybe that's why I struggle over time being like a football fan, because I see that like in the stadium, the same kind of like you're supposed to do what everybody else does, and just like it makes me nervous, and I don't go for it. But dang it, I'm talking about myself too much. I do want to introduce, of course, the first beer of the evening, the Messiah Nut Brown Ale from Hebrew, the chosen beer.
Why have just one?
Well, I have another beer, but it's a different beer. I like to, variety it.
No, that's the tagline for the polygamy ale.
It's got to be out of Utah.
Yes.
Tell everybody what you're drinking tonight, because I got to, in pre-show, because we're cool. We do pre-show. I got to see the amazing beer you have.
I am drinking a Cuke Nukem by who is this? By Burnham Brewing out of Indiana somewhere. I'm not sure where.
Indiana somewhere.
Yeah, that's the whole state. That everywhere in Indiana is Indiana somewhere.
That is true. And so on your show, I think it was the first episode, you said you had been atheist for about a decade. Like, what was that kind of process like, extracting yourself from that and realizing that you had a brain of your own?
It was really more like learning about Santa Claus. It's something that didn't happen. There wasn't like a sudden epiphany. Santa Claus didn't suddenly piss me off, nothing like that. It's just very slowly over a decade, the things made less and less sense. The motions were more and more just for the sake of my family. And before long, it was like, well, I ain't got shit to think about this, but maybe it'll come one day. So I kept going for another decade, and that's kind of when I gave up, because it's exhausting, like trying so hard to do something and constantly failing.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that's no duh when you realize it, but at the time it's like you can't really choose what you believe, but you can try as hard as you can to go to church and talk to God or whatever you're supposed to do in the individual church you go to. And if it doesn't work, it just doesn't work, and you have to. It's hard when you are kind of following along to the music. And you're like, I'm not hearing this music, so
Right. It was John 3:16 was probably the first thing that really fucked me up. I was kind of like, this makes no sense to me. I couldn't make sense to it. I couldn't make sense of it as a 12-year-old. And the older I got, the less and less sense it made. It was kind of like, it felt like some kind of weird D&D rule where God could only cast the magic spell with the sacrifice. And the more I thought about it, the more it was just complete and utter breakdown of the religion for me. That was kind of the starting point, where it was just this part alone does not make any sense.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot that doesn't make sense. Like there's one super like Christian guy on Twitter that I follow, and I just can't not follow him. And it's just like, God is perfect and we screwed things up. And I'm like, doesn't that make us more powerful than God? Because God should be able to stop that, right? Or God just like, whatever. It's, I don't know, but there's a definite wall of non-understanding between me and him. But I think we'll stay following each other. Some people you just can't. After a while, you give up. But with other ones, you're like, well, I'm just gonna, watch the ride go round.
Sure.
That's my personal experience. But so how are things with the family? We'll definitely talk about the relationship with your wife, the believer non-believer dynamic. But what about the rest of the family and the atheism? How's that going?
Well, I have two absolutely gorgeous girls, and my eldest is in a preschool program at our church, and that kind of sucks, because she came home the other day and asked me if God was a boy, and that's
You're gonna get a lot of questions.
Well,
I assume as a non-kid person, you get lots of questions anyway. But yeah, when it comes to religion and you're on two different sides, it's got to be like, what do I say?
And I'm probably going to keep my atheism. I mean, at my current pace in life, I'm probably going to keep my atheism a secret from my daughters, unless one day they come up to me with their own issues, and then we might have a special bonding moment. Who knows? But when she comes home as a 3-year-old and asks me things like, "What's God's gender?" Well, like, some people think he's a boy, some people think it's a girl. What do you think? Sort of thing. So, but yeah, other than that, family's great. They're wonderful. I feel very don't want to say blessed. Don't want to say thankful. I feel very happy that I have a healthy, beautiful family.
It's kind of all you can ask for at this point, but that's good.
Yep.
So what makes you decide, what, I want to get into a closet or a special room in the house and actually do a podcast of your own?
Well, my wife, and I talk about this in the first episode, a long time ago, my wife basically put an ultimatum, which was, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life with an atheist. And I said, okay, I really like you. You're hot. That part was in my brain. So I was like, I can find a way to make this work.
Use your atheist Jedi mind trick, obviously.
Yes.
Don't give away the secret, though.
I blinked twice and then shrugged to the left a little. Anyway, I basically made a promise to her that I would keep trying, which to me is not hard, because I don't really settle with any knowledge ever. I like to continually take in more data and see if I can challenge my own beliefs. I do that with most things, I think. So the prospect of accepting more data was never really a challenge for me. I honestly never really thought it would go anywhere. I never really thought suddenly I'd be like, oh yeah, God exists. This is pretty sweet. I never really thought that would happen. So making that promise at the time seemed really easy. And then, recently, a lot of time has passed, and she's brought up a few times, where are you in your spirituality? And I'll typically say something like, it's not something I want to talk about right now, to get it off my back at the time. But the reality of it is I have not really been trying to seek a spiritual life in any stretch. And so as snarky and as vulgar as I can be in my podcast at times, the point of it is to hopefully hear some kind of arguments that might make sense to me, because I've already accepted the fact that I'm not going to be the kind of person that can accept something based on faith, which by definition is belief without proof. That's never going to work for me. And the fact that there are so many intelligent people in my life, my wife, for instance, my father, who are incredibly intelligent and also incredibly religious, you know, I feel like there's got to be some kind of argument out there somewhere that I just haven't heard yet. And at the very least, I need a place to vent, because I can't talk about what I'm thinking to anyone. I don't have any friends that are atheists. I don't have any family that are atheists. I don't know anyone. And listening to podcasts and venting on my own is kind of the only reprieve I have from that.
Well, you have a friend who's an atheist now. Boom, who's 700 miles away. So there you go.
Cheers, bud.
I want to definitely make the people who are on the show and the people listening feel like, yes, you know somebody who's an atheist, and it's all right, and it's cool. And I am with you on the, I think that's part of the reason, like, when I want to do the shows, like, well, I could do interviews and get to know people and tell people at the podcast I'm listening to. And also it gives me a chance to talk about this kind of unfiltered, and, you know, the as dirty word it's been lately, or the safe spaces thing. It's like, this is kind of a safe space because you get to at least speak on this subject and not get accused of being a social justice warrior or whatever, you know, term people are mad at this week.
Right.
Just kind of go with it.
Sure.
So what made you go with, you know, Save My Soul as your title?
Well, the first rant that I did was on oh shit, what was the first rant that I did? You just listened to them.
Well, episode 1, I have prayer.
That's the one. So the thing that finally tipped me over the edge, and I talk about this in that episode, was my mother-in-law, again, also a very religious woman, said she would pray for me. And I bristled, you know, like a porcupine, and my wife noticed. And later on, she asked me about that. And I just got so mad because, and I talk about this in depth, but it's like, I'm so tired of people praying for things that don't matter and I don't need her help. I don't need prayer. I don't need anything. There are real things happening in the world right now that really blow. And the fact that you can't fix that with prayer is kind of proof to me that prayer doesn't fucking work. So, you know, for me, it's like, don't give God a pass by praying for Mr. middle-class, white, privileged dude in America who's got beautiful kids and a wife. I don't need that. And I don't want to, you know, I don't, just to quote myself, which is kind of, I guess, dorky, but I don't want to give God a pass. I don't want to become a statistic saying that prayer works just because my life turns out okay. And maybe it's kind of illogical to be so angry at that, but I literally just went into a tirade in the kitchen. And I was like, I got to get this out somewhere. I got to say something about this.
Well, it's the diminishing thing. I mean, as I mentioned in the show before, I had a situation where I was in the hospital and nearly died and had a staph infection and got out of it. And then a question would come up, you thanked God for that. And I was like, what about what I did? What about what the doctors did? What about medicine? What about the people who helped me get through the situation? I feel like, you got to change your order there. If you want to put God in there, that's okay. But what about the real things I have seen and felt? Although I guess felt isn't right, because I know you're big on not talking about your personal experience as proof, because it isn't.
I think
that's the way it goes.
I think I'm going to have to open myself up to anecdotal evidence. That's one of my big no-no rules, because even when I get a good, because I'm going to talk about this in the next show, but when I over Thanksgiving, I met with my father, who, when I was an atheist, when I was an open atheist about 10 years ago, my father gave me some interesting arguments that were not rare. I'm sure you've heard them, and I'm sure they're out in the community already, but they were interesting. And he presented some of them to me again on Sunday, because I kind of stuck my toe in the water. My dad's the one family member that might be cool with the whole thing, you know. So I kind of stuck my toe out there and said, "Hey, Dad, if I told you that I had an atheist podcast, would you want to know?" And he's kind of like,
Oh, wow.
maybe. But anyway, I was just kind of testing the water with him, and I don't remember the question now.
I don't know if I had I think I was just talking about my own personal experience and the bristling at the idea that, you know, things that happen in your life where you made a major effort, you just say, "Oh, God did it," you know, which kind of I feel like it always diminishes humanity in general, because it's like God gets the credit when good things happen, and when bad things happen, it's people's fault.
Yeah, sure.
And that's some kind of no-win situation that I don't want anything to do with. But I do want to give you props for your extensive show titles and show notes. So how did you come up with your one-word format, and are you afraid of running out?
No, actually, I part of my job is managing business, and I have a very forward-thinking personality just by nature. In the same way that businesses can plan 2 years ahead for financial concerns, I plan 2 episodes ahead. So I already have. I'm on 5. 5 is on air. 6 is going to air in about a week now, and I already have 7 penciled in. So I feel like there's just enough out there to bitch about. You know, it's I don't really see the list getting any shorter. And you know, at the very least, if it did run out, all I'd have to do is check out the current news, and I'd find something there to piss me off. It's that easy, I feel like. And I probably will never be a news reviewing show, but you know, you can watch an episode of Fox News or something and hear their take on a recent shooting in America, for instance, and find enough vitriol. I personally can find enough vitriol to condense down into one word and write about.
Yeah, I think we'll cover it. And I'll also want to throw appreciation for your old-timey language like bee's knees and bully for you. I think bringing it back is very important.
I'm a huge dork, so I can't even help it. It just happens.
Well, I mean, the personality comes out, and that's kind of the point with these podcasts is like 5 shows can do the same news story, but it's the personality of the people on it and how they present it. And you doing, you know, playing with voices and all that, and not just doing necessarily a straight through kind of rant version, which is occasionally what I do when I do a solo show, and just talk for however long I can read until I run out of words. But I like the way that works, and look at us. So it's time for the live read one. I realized I haven't actually given love to this group yet on the show. This is the original skeptic group in Atlanta where I live. It's called Gust. It's in Gwinnett County, so it's Gwinnetians Understanding Secular Truths. It's not the easiest name to come off your tongue, but many moons ago I attended a Gust holiday party, and I took a picture of me drinking a beer with a guy dressed up like Jesus. This wasn't necessarily accepted well at home, but I had fun, and I try to reach a meeting every once in a while. And I do get to say thanks to Russ and Lori for putting the group together, and Dylan for hosting. And yes, they actually have childcare, and I believe the next meeting is a week from Monday, the 14th, and that's the holiday party. So I got to go because it's one of the ones where I actually get to drink beer. So that's always fun.
That is clutch.
Let's get back to the show. So we are.
A quick question for you.
Yeah.
So you're in Atlanta.
Correct.
Have you been to Dragon Con?
I haven't actually gone to the convention. Like, it's sort of an annual tradition to go down there and just people watch.
What I used to be one of those people that was there dressed up in full garb. And my favorite part about Dragon Con every year was that it always fell on the same weekend as some football game. And so there was always an away team coming to Atlanta having no idea what was going on, some college family. And suddenly they'd be stopped at a crosswalk by a fleet of stormtroopers. And it always just made my life to see their faces.
It's a crazy weekend in Atlanta because there's a big book festival, because my wife's really into book, you know, kind of the book industry itself. So that's going on. There's a NASCAR race. It's always one or even two college football games happening, and Dragon Con, and I'm probably missing two or three other things. So yeah, the mixture of people like wearing University of Clemson gear, and then stormtroopers, and insert anything else you can. Star Trek outfits is definitely a fun combination. But I know they have like kind of a skeptic track. So one of these years I got to get down for that. It seems like we always have this book festival we go to, and that's it.
Sure.
That's our thing. And look at me, I'm already on my Anderson Valley Winter Solstice beer. Anderson Valley, California, I like about every beer of theirs they have, and I love winter beers. It's just dark and heavy and delicious. Unlike, well, we'll see if the conversation's heavy, but we are both in mixed relationships. So I know we've kind of talked about it a bit, but how are you able to kind of balance it out and make it work?
The same way I was able to be a Christian in my family's eyes for 20 some years. I just don't talk about it. That's the honest and best way to do it.
Yeah,
well, I can't say honest.
To hold back, and
yeah,
there are times you just have to figure it out. It's always a compromise in a way.
Right.
But I hear, and it's up to you if you want to do this, because before the show, I was like, hey, let's get a question from the wives, and I didn't get one, but I hear you have one, if you want to share it.
I do. This happened just the other day, and I need just a minute of backstory here because it's kind of out of the blue otherwise. We were talking about the attacks on Paris, the recent attack on Paris, and how we felt about it, and it led to the discussion of whether or not the devil existed. And I found out that my wife believed in the devil. And that was a shock to me, not because I know Christians believe in the devil. That's a very common thing, but I did not know that was part of her, ComChrist packaged services, if you know what I mean. So the fact that she suddenly exposed that to me, I was shocked. So I had to question, you mean the red guy with the pointy horns, do you think he's like physically walking around the earth? And she said, no, I think he speaks to you and can influence your thoughts and actions. And so I said, okay, do you think he has ever spoken to you? And she said, yes. And she described a type of thought, which was so aside from a subset of evil thoughts would be destructive thoughts, which would be thoughts that have no possible gain for you as a person. Stealing something, there's a gain there, but like jumping off of a roof, for instance, no gain, no reason to do that. But I don't know about you, but I've been hiking before on the top of a tall cliff and thought, man, I wonder what it would be like to just jump right off. I don't consider myself a suicidal person by any means, but I have that thought. And so she asked me, how do I account for that thought? If there is no devil, where is that thought coming from? A purely destructive thought. No evolutionary reason a brain would make that thought pop into your consciousness. She believes that those kind of thoughts come from the devil, and it gave me a bit of a pause because I can't think of a reason it would happen, just that it does. And what do you think? Do you have a better answer?
You probably have to get into brain chemistry to see how that goes, because I'm sure everybody has those kind of thoughts, and maybe the people who are more apt to listen to those thoughts end up not living and going on. But it doesn't mean it gets defeated all the way, because I think we all have negative thoughts and ideas that come in, but usually we're just like brush it off after a second. Or if you have a depressive mood, it kind of passes like a wave, like you get stuck in the undertow and you have to wait for the wave to come back so you can get back and breathe. And that happens. I don't even know. I guess the devil is in the Bible, but that devil part just, it seems like the devil is like kicked out by God, but somehow they're working in tandem because God's thrown the bad people to the devil to take care of. So obviously they must have some kind of arrangement.
Yeah, if you believe in the whole mythology, you can't really accept monotheism anymore because they have their own little zones. They can't go to each other's houses. That's the whole point. And they're their own lords of their own domain. It's a weird. It's a very weird thing.
Yeah, Catholicism, I mean, seems like definitely there are many gods because they do the saints, and then God is three in one, and Mary for just getting impregnated by God is kind of up in that level, and there's never one. You always had the saints for everything. I mean, they were just doing the Scathing Atheist this week, a story about there had like the remains of a girl who was like raped, but she forgave her rapist, and so she was considered a saint. And it's like, man, that's one of the most depressing saints I've ever heard of.
Yet they
But
somehow
that's
make
like
it funny. They're good at that.
I don't know, but I just think it's hard to believe in like pure good and pure evil because I think everybody has aspects of both in them.
Sure.
And who created that? Well, I don't know not to say because to just do the white hat black hat thing always it seems to go bad places.
Yeah.
That's just the way my Facebook page has been. With all the shootings, it's always like ban all guns. No, guns aren't the problem, and it's just like, oh boy, I can't. I'm intrigued for a while, and then I have to go away and not deal.
I'll join you on that one. The whole gun control, gun violence thing is I have never been more on the fence about any issue. I really don't have a strong opinion about it, and I see both sides, and I see the merit to both sides. And um, like most things, the extremists on both sides I think are ridiculous. But it's just a very fascinating issue that will exhaust you and will piss your friends off if you say anything one way or the other.
I know, but what other thing in this country where like the extreme is actually the reality? Like nothing else in our country is like as unregulated. I mean, someone made a joke about how guns should be regulated the way people are regulating abortions, 48-hour waiting periods, and you have to get a scan, and you have to get like some kind of insurance like you get with a car, and if someone uses your gun, then you're liable for what happens. And or be like somebody posted something about Switzerland where like everybody has to have a gun or 50% of people own guns, but you're only allowed to have ammo on like gun ranges. So
Sure.
that makes it a little hard to have a crime of passion because you're like, I'm going to throw this gun at you, which makes it harder. But then someone's like, post a story. Some guy stabbed 12 people to death. That wasn't a gun. It's like, okay, but you have to get in there to kill somebody with a knife.
Yeah.
Shoot somebody, you can do it by accident, or you can do it at a distance and go, oops, but it's too late. It's over.
And when you have, I think if I was in a crowd of people and a guy walks in with a gun, shooting me for whatever God or goddess or not God, whatever reason he had shooting at people, I would be pretty happy if some bro with a mustache next to me pulls out a pistol and pops him in the head. And that would make me pretty happy. And at the same time, if gun regulation was stronger, maybe the crazy people wouldn't have had the gun to begin with. So it's just one of those things where I totally see both sides. I absolutely get it, and I don't have a clear answer.
I don't remember which shooting it was because we can't remember because there are at least two every day. Someone actually had a gun and he was on a campus. It might have been in Oregon. And he's like, I didn't take my gun out because I thought that the cops might think I was the shooter and try to take me out.
Sure.
And there's always that whole like the shooting in the theater, like if other people had guns, like, yeah, but then there would have been this crossfire and other people could have died. And
Yeah, it's true. That is
I
true.
feel like more guns necessarily make it better, but I mean, I can't remember if there's a county or a town near me where everybody is like legally required to have a gun and like have it in a holster all the time. Like we're in the Wild West or something.
Get him, Georgia.
I guess that, yeah, welcome to Georgia. We're getting more breweries. At least we have that going for us, We have the thing about Georgia, which is odd, is we're like Georgia is just as bad as other southern states, but we're just lazy, like the state. And I say we, like I'm part of it. But every time there's a dumb, like the Religious Freedom Act, which, hey, Indiana, nice, you led on that one. Georgia just basically copied it. Like they always copy the dumb ideas that other states do. They don't come up with their own ideas. I don't know if that's dumb or better. I can't say.
Yeah, I live in Indiana. I still count myself as a South Carolinian, so I think Georgians are so messed up because their peaches are so terrible.
Yeah, but if you go to it's not necessarily the same anymore, but usually if you go to the store and you buy peaches, they're from California.
Hmm.
Like they ship the Georgia peaches elsewhere,
Yeah.
and then we get the peaches from across the country, which makes sense. Okay, wait. So you say you're from South Carolina?
Yeah, that was where I grew up. So when I say liberal church, and when I say first 20 years of my life, that's where all that happened. The Indiana bits only a very recent part of my life, and that's why I feel very, very qualified to say it blows. It's the planet Hoth. That nowhere have I met a territory as inhospitable to human life as the barren cornfields of Indiana in the winter. It just blows. It absolutely sucks.
Well, I attended college, University of Missouri, and yeah, there's a lot of nothing. Like we once took a trip to Wyoming to like do a North Platte River like rafting trip, and driving through like Iowa and like Nebraska and Kansas, it was just like there's nothing. It's like flat. There's nothing happening. The wind never stops because there are no hills. It's just
Yeah.
nothing. And you get in Kansas City, you got the extreme heat and you got the extreme cold.
Yeah, and in Indiana we
You
have
definitely get the cold.
we have all that bad stuff, and we also have the sweet smell of pig shit on every freeway. It's a great thing.
So you're excited about that, huh?
Oh, I love it. I wouldn't move for anything.
So I'm going to use a line from your show. So, but why is your wife more skeptical about a public hot tub than Jesus?
Because you can prove bacteria, but you can't prove Jesus. That's going to be my stance.
You should put that on a T-shirt, man.
Yeah, that's actually what I'm wearing right now. You can't see it because I'm
You can't see it. Yes, he is Avatar only, which I think about the fifth to a fourth of the shows I've done have been Avatar only, which is fun. I'm talking to an avatar. There's really a person behind there somewhere.
But my avatar actually is me. So there's that. At least I have that going for me.
'Tis true. Now I didn't get a question on my end, but I did grab 31 questions for atheists from a Christian apologist. So I'm going to ask you to pick a number between 1 and 31, and we're going to give it a go and see what this question is and what kind of answers do we have.
Well, in that case, I'm going to go to random.org because that's how I like to do
Scientifical.
I'm going to get a free integer generator from 1 to 31 and go. 21, good sir.
21. If there are moral absolutes, could you list a few of them? Wow, that's a weird question. Like, could you say absolutely it is wrong to kill a child?
No, because I've played Witcher 3 and I know that part. I know how that works.
So video games help? Or
yes.
No, I don't know if that is a video game. I should be a better gamer.
Well done, sir. Moral abs. I mean, that's a loaded question because you don't want to say morals are completely relative because I don't believe that. I believe there are things that are objectively wrong, not because there's a superpower that says so, but because enough of us get it to where it's instilled in our DNA. We get that certain things are bad, and it comes from years and years and years of cultural and social evolution to accept that. But yeah, I think that is enough to justify something as universally bad or universally good.
Yeah, I think we have this thing called empathy, and I don't think it's just God's rules anyway. So you have empathy, and you have mirror neurons, and you see other people's pain, you feel their pain, and you understand that you don't want to cause other people pain, and that's kind of the idea: to cause as little pain as possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I've had Matt Slick has been interviewed on a few other shows I've listened to, and it's just the apologist thing gets kind of old because it seems that the argument is basically you need revelation from God, and how do you determine a real revelation as opposed to just somebody making stuff up or someone who might be mentally ill? There's got to be a way. Like if supernatural exists, there still has to be a method to it.
Sure.
Prove a real supernatural versus a fake. But my theory is if something quote unquote supernatural is proven to be real, like ghosts, then they're not supernatural anymore. They're natural. Supernatural is just like what we haven't figured out yet.
I like that. I'd never thought of it that way. That's interesting.
Yay! I thought on the show. Look at me, proof, people.
You get the smart cred for the night. I'm just gonna be the other guy.
Thinking it can happen. Yeah, I like that. So question 23 is, if you believe that the God of the Old Testament is morally bad, by what standard do you judge that he is bad? The God that basically ordered entire nations to be killed, but take the virginal daughters for yourself.
I'm gonna judge it by the Lot's wife standard, which is fuck. I'm a pillar of salt. That's my I don't. That was, and my wife and I get into fights about this too, about how the God of the Bible is or is not moral. But I don't think anyone can look at the things that are in the Old Testament and say, hey, that's a moral guy. I think that's the whole reason people say they have that in their corner pocket. Yeah, there's a New Testament for that. Like that was just those stories that I don't like are metaphorical. That, you know, those are the way people needed to hear those stories at that time. But there's a New Testament revising that. And I think the fact that that apologetic even exists is proof that God was bullshit. That particular God was complete horseshit. And I think everybody knows that. Except for maybe the Jews. That's separate, I guess.
Well, I have my whole Twilight, 50 Shades of Grey theory for the Old Testament and New Testament. You know, the 50 Shades of Grey is basically fan fiction based on Twilight and New Testament, and let's go with the Quran and let's go with the Book of Mormon are basically fan fiction based on the Old Testament. And the Old Testament, much like Twilight, is based on older fairy tales and stories that go back a long way and are definitely not original. And the sparkly vampire part is just, you know, just too far.
Wait. Are you telling me that Noah wasn't the first flood myth? Because I'm pretty sure that's not true. I'm pretty sure he was the first.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, it all changes over time. Like our Constitution was built to be changed, and the holy books tend to kind of change translations or at least meanings over time to kind of match the current culture that's going on.
Sure.
At least to a point where people can survive. I mean, I don't know, but that's the theory.
I like it. I'm a fan.
It's not a scientific theory, trust me. That's different.
Anytime you can describe something biblical by introducing softcore woman porn, I am pro. Like, keep up the good work, sir.
I mean, it's weird because the Christians and Muslims don't like the Jews, but without the Jews, they don't exist. Like the Jews are like, whether their stories were original, they stuck. It's like, no, we have to use their stories to make our story legitimate. And it gives you legitimacy that you don't really have on your own, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like a religion needs to just start from scratch. But maybe that'll happen. Who knows?
Well, I know you might not be a gamer, but the South Park video game had a great, I guess you'd call it not a preview, but like a commercial for it on TV once. And, you know, Cartman was saying, what this town needs right now is a savior. And Kyle steps up and says, I'll do it. And Cartman says, don't be ridiculous, Kyle. You're a Jew. Jews can't be saviors. It's like a perfect dig at exactly what you're saying, you know?
No, you can't. And both of them have tried to wipe the Jews out, and not successfully.
Sure.
It's hard to do. So I'm going to do, since we'll be taking a context for that one. Actually, I won't. No one ever does it to me, and I love it. Live read 2. I'm just going to mention Demise on my show 2 episodes ago, and that's a gamer right there. Well, check out his Godless Nerds podcast. Now you can listen to it on iTunes form. You can also go to YouTube and search using Godless Nerds. Much easier to spell than my show name, that's for sure. So yeah, check him out. So are you a like Xbox, PlayStation, Atari 2600? What do you got?
Well, currently Xbox One, but I've dabbled through the years. I've had systems all the way. I think my first was a Sega Genesis, and that probably dates my age. But that was the first one. But yeah, I've right now I'm all Xbox One. That's what I'm about.
I just find the controllers have gotten so complex, and every time I go to my nephew's place, they want to play like the latest game and destroy me because there's 50 buttons to press.
Sure.
You have to like all the buttons and your nose to hit everything. And I'm always like, hey, let's play. We go on the Wii and we play the old Nintendo hockey game where it was the fat guy, the medium guy, and the skinny guy. And I managed to beat them because there's only 2 buttons. And for some reason, that confuses them and they can't handle it. But the 20 buttons, they got that down. They're like, oh, you got to hit the 3 buttons. And then as we're playing, oh, yeah, but you also turn this button to the left as you're punching someone. And just like, yeah, boy, yeah. I don't know the instincts or the patience to figure it out.
When your 3-year-old can grab your iPhone, turn it to Spanish, and lock it where only you can only place 911 calls, that's when you know the kids are better than you. And I've already hit that wall where I was pretty good at shooters 5 years ago, but I'm not good anymore. I had to play a nice slow game where 12-year-olds can't make fun of my genitals when I die.
That's a goal to have in life, to not have your genitals made fun of when you die.
Right.
Oh, do we get into the heavy stuff? So we have, of course, people might be listening to this in the distant future when there are no shootings and we're in the Badlands. But for now, we live in the current system. So the San Bernardino shootings happened a couple days ago, and we found out that people with Islamic names did it. So that means they're terrorists. I don't know. How do we even approach something like this?
I heard they had a 6-month-old kid. Did you hear that? The husband and wife.
I heard they had a kid and like dropped the kid off at like daycare before they left.
Here's what I don't understand. 'Cause regardless of what you believe, how do you have a 6-month-old kid, if that is the fact? That's the fact that I heard. And you suddenly decide, I'm going to go do this thing that I believe in, regardless of what this thing is, knowing that kid is never going to see me again. Okay, yeah, the violence sucks. All that sucks. But being able to say, this is my kid, and I'm going to go make it an orphan intentionally is so anti-evolutionary. It's so demented to me. So you add that layer, as a father, you add that layer on top of the demented nature of just wanting to kill somebody for whatever reason they had to begin with. And it's a whole new level of I don't fucking get that for me.
Well, I think we're all kind of dealing with it, like, I don't know, there's like gallows humor to it. I mean, we can only joke because we don't know how to deal with something like this. Like, you try to imagine, like, I know after 9/11, somebody posted an article, and it was like trying to imagine what it was like to being on one of those planes before they hit the building, and trying to imagine being in one of those buildings when a guy comes in with a machine gun. Like, you can't. It's like a horror that's beyond your comprehension. But that kind of thing, and of course what happened a couple days ago was an extreme case because at least 14 people died, and say usually during a shooting only like 2 people die. That's nothing. 14 is a real number, but it's just it just happens so often that you can't deal with it, and people end up having the same kind of arguments, and it's just hard to get to deal. I mean, you couldn't obviously deal with what happened 9/11. It took time, but obviously we didn't deal with it very well because we seemed to have made the problem worse. But this, yeah, I think it was a couple, right? And that's something we haven't had before.
Yeah, it's like I'm married. I don't know if you are, but I'm married, and I have bad ideas sometimes. There it is. There's the ring. I have bad ideas sometimes, and you know what happens when I have a bad idea? My wife looks at me and says, "Dumbass, that's a bad idea." So how do you have 2 adults who both have the same really, really bad idea? And maybe, and I've talked about this, or I think I'm going to talk about this in the near future, but it's
spoiler alert.
It's right. You heard it here first on the Zachrilege podcast. The how do you I feel like there's a separate class of people that is able to believe in something so strongly. And I honestly don't think I could ever be that class of person, which means I'm not capable to understand or think, explain their motives, because it's such a completely foreign thing to me. And yeah, I don't know how you feel about that, but how it seems to me there are people that are just fundamentally different in their ability to see magic, mysticism, supernatural, faith, all that good stuff. And I guess that's one of the reasons people like you and I are at a loss. If we don't see those things in the world, we can't even put ourselves in those shoes.
Well, that's one of the things about religions is they usually hurt the people in the religion more. But when you're heard that your people are God's chosen people, like, the Jews, they started it, but boy, did they do it well. And that happened. The Muslims like, wait, we need a God for ourselves. And the Christians say, we need a God slash person slash whatever Jesus was or wasn't to be our God. And I don't know, it makes me think of, I'll do a football comparison since we're both football fans. Like, people are defending the Washington Redskins team name when it's obviously a horrible thing, but they do it because they've been rooting for this team for 50 years and they have this emotional connection to the team, but they think they have this emotional connection to this name, which is horrible. But they go, wait, our owner found these guys that he paid money to who said it's most Native Americans don't think it's a. It's like most Native Americans, no, it's bad. And that happens with religion. Like, you can't see the bad stuff. Like, if it's someone who's in your tribe, it's a tribalism thing. You're like, well, I can't say anything bad about them because they're in my tribe. But then, well, actually, you should be able to do that. You should be able to see it clear if they're in your tribe.
And I've heard people say things about this, and I kind of agree. I think you have a responsibility to say something about people that are in your tribe and fucking up. I think. And it's not even because it's like you're responsible for your brother or whatever that biblical thing is, but brother's keeper, that was the one. But it's the if I'm going to label myself as a Christian, for instance, why would I keep that label if I see other Christians doing really shitty things? I should either fix the problem myself to the best of my ability, or I should change my label. And religion is one of those things where people can voluntarily just say, "Oh, that's just not a Christian," because I don't agree with him. And I don't
a true Christian. Where I honestly, I know there are 30,000 different sects of Christianity. I think there are as many sects as there are people. Maybe people who are like in couples, and it's like the indoctrination is involved. Maybe they both believe in the same God, but it's like everybody has a different. And everybody says they have that personal relationship with Jesus. I'm pretty sure Jesus isn't the same for each person. He's putting out white for everybody and really got nice muscles and holding a gun. That's so Jesus, I tell you.
For me, Jesus is a 4'6" Washington Redskins fan who walks across the crowded office building for that free cup of coffee because you know what? If you're a Redskins fan, you gotta take what you can get. You know what I'm saying?
Well, technically they are tied for first, but man, it would be nice if they could come up with a new name.
Yeah.
It's just like. And when their Twitter account said Happy Thanksgiving, I'm like, oh boy. That's just, everybody was like, anytime you guys tweet anything, it's going to be taken badly. But that's
Happy Thanksgiving. Would you like some free blankets at the charity center?
That's social. I guess that's social media for you.
Yeah.
So is the beer scene quality up there in Indiana? Are there certain brews I'm going to need to do like an exchange for?
Absolutely. There's quite a few microbrews in my area that are solid that nobody ever would have heard of unless you live here. But even if you're anywhere near Chicago, you get the good Goose Island because Goose Island is one of those people that got bought out by insert big beer name here. I don't remember which one.
Anheuser-Busch or InBev or whatever. There's like a company that owns them. It's just giant.
Right, but the local place in Chicago still brews their own stuff, so you can actually get the microbrew version of the Goose Island stuff here. So that's kind of cool.
Well, it's true. The Black Friday, they always do the Bourbon County Stout, which is like their big thing.
Yeah.
And in Georgia, they have a rule where you can't have more than 14% alcohol. So they brewed two different kinds. One was 13.8, one was 14.3. They accidentally shipped the wrong one to Georgia, so they actually had to ship it back. So some people actually brought it in from other states, but I still think, we've just reached the point where we've broken the record for number of breweries in the country. Because like in the 19th century, you had to have local breweries because they didn't ship anything. But now it's crazy. Like I think there's something like 56 breweries in Georgia and like 14 more are opening in the next year. And it's just the local stuff's great, and you can get great stuff from around the country. And there's never like there's this one very specific kind of beer that I can't get anywhere else. You can probably get at least 5 different beers that are very similar locally.
Sure.
So that's great. I mean, that's one thing where everybody's like, oh, America's falling apart. It's like, no, America's doing really well in beer and wine and I don't know what else, guns, obviously. I don't know. I feel like we're still excelling in some areas.
We're probably the LARPing capital of the world. I can't think of any other countries that would take it as seriously as we do.
Well, we do take a lot of stuff seriously. Football, but that's our own sport. It's funny that almost every other sport they seem to play in other countries, but American football is not a really big thing in other countries. I'm sure they play it some, but it's like, come on.
Yeah.
So we always like, we're the world champions of our own country. Yay. Do we really have to extend it? So what are some of like your favorite podcasters, like people you listen to and people you either emulate or maybe want to have in your show, even though you're really not doing an interview show, but I'm sure you wouldn't mind doing 1 or 2 occasionally.
You know what I'd like to do in the future? If I ever actually get someone to send me an argument for the probable existence of a God, I would love that. If that ever happens, I would love to have someone else come on and dissect it with me. I just think that'd be fun. But
yeah, you are still waiting.
I am still waiting.
I don't know if you should talk about because you're looking for arguments for God, but you have certain stipulations you have.
Yeah, there are 5 basic rules, which I think are pretty reasonable. You gotta be nice. You don't be a dick. Like the whole point of this show is to have fun. And if you're going to come in and be a troll, I have no patience. I don't know what order these are going to be in, but I also say don't be a bigot, which is similar. But you'd be surprised, especially you're kind of in the South. Atlanta is not really the South; it's just surrounded by the South. But you're kind of in the South, so
it's the South.
It's
the South with just a large amount of people in professional sports.
You can have these great people come up to you with a great argument for a loving, benevolent God who then say, oh damn, why'd the fucking Mexicans mess up my shingles? You can have like really nice, benevolent arguments with still a hint of bigotry. I don't want that. If you got to be a bigot to have a good argument for God, I don't care to hear it. And of course, having fun is a rule. I think people won't listen to my show if they don't have a sense of humor because I drop some F-bombs here and there, obviously. And one of my rules is, for me, I'm going to always respond if you send me an email. And I'm going to keep up with that as long as I can, which for now is very easy because I have 0 emails.
Yeah, speaking of responding, I do want to give you credit because you actually reached out to me probably a couple weeks ago, and you mentioned, like in every episode, you mentioned, I have this email address, please send me emails, and you keep saying no one's emailed me. Well, I have an email address for this show, and I didn't check it very often. Then I realized, oh crap, this guy actually emailed me wanting to be on the show. So I'm glad you were patient and waited for my response because I do this pretty much as a hobby and something I enjoy, and I don't care if I'm reaching out, bringing on people who have 100,000 listeners or 2 listeners because it's just a good conversation. And obviously I'm leaning toward people who do podcasts, but that's not always the case. And next week that won't be the case. But it's just people I find interesting and I want to talk to, and I think other people will find interesting. So I'm glad you stuck in there and waited because I have, of course, being in email as a profession, it's like I have too many email addresses.
Sure.
I'm like, I should just send people to my regular email. No, let's have a separate one for the show. That's what so I'll do that.
You did ask about podcasts that I liked, and I wanted to give you kind of the trail of how I got here, which was fantasy football is where it started. Listening to, I wanted to be good, so I listened to some fantasy football podcasts, and then after I had the earbuds in, I started downloading Scathing Atheist was the first religious show or can you call it religious? Religious themed show that I found, which led me to Cognitive Dissonance and Atheists on Air and No Religion Required and Zachrilege course. So that's kind of the path I got to find out that you were looking for people like me that have a good conversation with, have a good beer with, and it seemed like a very appealing thing.
Well, as I forgot to mention, like the local group Gust, which is really in Atlanta. There are a lot of atheist groups, and I just haven't connected. It's weird to do like internet shows and then just like get in person and just not connect. Well, in the Gust meeting, one of the guys who went there mentioned the Barroom Atheist. And so I started listening to the Barroom Atheist. And then when Susie got sick, Bill was like, hey, we need guest bartenders. I'm like, well, let me try this out. So one night last November, I picked up a beer called Even More Jesus. And I drank that while talking about Psalms with Bill and Susie and did the show. And I was like, maybe I can do my own. And that's kind of how it started. And, been a guest on a few shows, and it's been fun. And damn, I should have mentioned it earlier. I was on Waiting for Wrath earlier this week. And I almost want to apologize because the shows that have like multiple people, like where they had 4 people, I always feel like I'm interrupting, and I'm kind of a shy person. So it's hard for me to jump in. So I don't think I jumped in as much. But Waiting for Wrath is a great show. They're out of Wyoming, and they drink beer, and they basically criticize or analyze a beer before they get into their long show, and they are serious about their sound. They actually do like a 3-hour recording, and their show's like an hour. And I'm like, you know what I do? I show up on Google Hangouts and do my show, record it, and burn it to MP3, and that's what I do. And I listen to about 5 seconds of it. Okay, sounds good. Okay, let's go.
Well, if it's for me, this show is a hobby as well, and I can't imagine even doing a show a week, as a lot of these guys do, and 2 weeks for me, and it's only. By the way, if you're listening to this, it's 15 minutes. You can handle that. It's like the brownie at the end of the Thanksgiving dinner. Just save a little room for side.
Yeah, because last week I talked to Bryce, did Naked Mormonism. His 1 year anniversary show was 7.5 hours, and his normal show is about 2 hours. And It does seem like most atheist shows are at least an hour, and some are 2 to 3, and you get like Dogma Debate, which ends up being like 4 to 5 hours. And for some reason, he wants to do 2 of those a week. It's just a matter of time. So yeah, if you want to like, hey, I just have a short commute and I listen to like 15 minutes, you're hitting that. There's a market that needs to be exploited because all these super long shows. I mean, people do segments, but some shows there really aren't break points, and you just have to go. So it's nice to have I'd say relatively bite size. I think I may have listened to 3 episodes, 3 through 5 on my drive home today. That's how fun traffic was.
Yeah, you can
in Atlanta on a Wednesday.
Yeah, you can take a good shit and make it through episode 2 and 3. It's amazing thing.
There you go. You can take good shit. So talk about the future. You say you have things planned ahead. This whole planning ahead thing is confusing and odd to me. So tell me about what's coming up, and tell people where they can find you.
Well, I am a free podcaster, meaning I have not yet spent a dime on my podcasting, and the only way I figured out how to do that was through iTunes. There may be ways to do that in other venues, but so far you can only find me on iTunes. I am the Save My Soul podcast, and then when you type that in, you get a bunch of religious shows and me. I'll be the one with the explicit tag, but expect the same thing every 2 weeks. Every Wednesday, every second Wednesday, I'll be dropping out a 15-minute show to talk about whatever happened to me over the past couple weeks, whatever issue I'm struggling with. And, hopefully one of these days I'll have longer shows because I'll have some listener feedback to respond to. I think next week's will be longer, or no, 2 weeks from now will be longer because it will have me responding to my father's apologetic.
Looking forward to that. And by the way, I did just post a 5-star iTunes review for you today. I've been trying to do that more consciously for shows I listen to and giving them that positive feedback other than just, taking them out of context on Twitter. Which if you're on Twitter, I'll be happy to do that. And if not, I'll do it and just not, tag you. So
I appreciate that. I can barely keep up with Twitter in my real life. I can't imagine having to keep up with a fake life Twitter where you have a pseudonym,
I have 2. Yeah, I have a Zachrilege account, and I have one for my regular name, which is mainly football-based, so you might actually enjoy that one too. But, okay, so we've given your show the love. So if you want to support this show, well, you can be like Bobby, Hugh, and T.O.D., men of distinction, whether they listen to the show or not. Go to patreon.com/Zachrilege, and it's really easy to spell if you can, you're on iTunes, or If you're on YouTube, you can see it, Zachrilege, and I can even spell it after 2 beers. So follow me on Twitter, like my Zachrilege Cast page on Facebook, because I will post about shows I'm listening to and find interesting, not just about me. And send all hate mail, and if you want to be on the show, to zachrilege.cast@gmail.com. Thanks to Sai for being on tonight. Stay safe, and if you need to chat, I am available. If you're an atheist and feel alone, you are not alone. Reach out, let's chat, and let's get that human connectedness that keeps people coming back every Sunday. So stay skeptical, and we will just say good night, everybody.